Introduction. My dream to travel. Hello, dear listener. My name is Jadwiga, but you can call me Yadi if it is easier. I come from a small city in Eastern Europe. My life at home is simple. I work in a local office, I spend time with my family, and I meet friends in cafes during weekends. Life is comfortable, but sometimes it feels the same every day. I often dream about faraway places, colorful countries, and new adventures. Since I was a teenager, I have loved reading books about traveling. I watched documentaries on television and listened to stories from people who visited other countries. Many times, I looked at the map and imagined how it would feel to stand in a very different place, to hear another language, and to smell food that I never tried before. India was always in my mind. Maybe it was because of the bright colors in the photos, or the music that sounded so emotional and deep, or the way people described it as a place of contrasts. Some said India was chaotic, noisy, and crowded, but also full of beauty, kindness, and life. I wanted to see it with my own eyes, not only through books or the internet. For many years, it was only a dream. I did not have much money, and I was afraid to travel so far alone, but something inside me always whispered, "One day you will go, one day you will walk there." This year, I finally made a decision. I was 27 years old, and I felt that it was the right moment. I told myself, if not now, then when? I started to save money every month, and slowly my dream became possible. My family was surprised when I told them. My mother said, "India? That is so far." My father asked if I was not afraid. I smiled and said, "Yes, I am afraid, but I am also very excited." I decided to travel for 1 week. It was not very long, but it was enough to feel the taste of the country. I chose to visit 2 of the biggest cities. I wanted to see the streets, the people, the culture, and the daily life. I promised myself that I would not only look like a tourist, but also try to connect with the place. I also decided to bring my old film camera. It was a gift from my grandfather, and I loved it very much. It is not easy to use and the film is limited, but that makes every photo more special. I wanted my trip to be not only in my memory, but also on film with all the mistakes, the light and the texture of real photography. Before my trip, I also started a small blog. It was a place where I usually wrote about books or daily life. I told my readers that I would write about my journey to India. They were excited, and many of them said, "Please share everything. We want to see India through your eyes." So here I am, ready to tell you my story. It is not only a travel diary. It is a journey of my heart. It is about leaving my comfort zone, going far away, and finding something new in the world and in myself. So, here I am. Preparing for the trip. When you travel far, preparation is important. For me, the preparation was almost as exciting as the trip itself. Every evening after work, I sat with my laptop and searched for information about India. I read about the climate, about the cities, about the traditions, and about the culture. I wanted to respect the country and not behave like a tourist who knows nothing. I learned that India is very diverse. Every state has its own language, food, and traditions. That made me feel a little nervous because I knew 1 week would never be enough to understand everything. But I also felt happy because it meant that every day would bring something new. I made a list of things to take with me: clothes for hot weather, but also something modest for temples, comfortable shoes. Because I wanted to walk a lot, my small laptop for writing my blog, a notebook and pen. because sometimes I prefer to write by hand, my film camera with 3 rolls of film carefully packed in a small box, and of course some small gifts from my country, just in case I met people who were kind to me. One evening, I went shopping for clothes that would be good for traveling. I chose long, light dresses and a scarf to cover my head. If needed, I looked in the mirror and tried to imagine myself walking in the streets of India. I smiled because it felt so unreal and so close at the same time. I also read about the food. I learned that many dishes are spicy and that there are many vegetarian options. That was good for me. Because I do not eat much meat, I made a small list. Curry, biryani, samosa, lassi, gulab jamun, I wrote. Try them all. The weeks before the trip passed quickly. At work, I finished my projects and told my boss about my holiday. My colleagues were surprised when I said I am going to India. Some of them asked me to bring spices or tea. Others just said, "Wow, that is brave." My family worried a little. My mother called me every day and asked, "Are you sure? Do you have everything? What if something happens?" I told her, "Don't worry, I will be careful." Inside, I was also a little scared, but I tried to stay calm. I knew that fear is part of any big step. Finally, the day before the trip came, my suitcase stood ready in the corner of my room. I looked at it and thought, inside this bag is my next week, my adventure, my dream. That night I could not sleep well. My heart was beating fast. I was nervous, but also full of joy. The next morning I woke up early. I drank tea with my parents, hugged them, and took a taxi to the airport. When I looked out of the window, the streets of my city looked the same as always. But for me, they were different because I knew that very soon I would be far away in another world. When I arrived at the airport, I checked my ticket many times. Is it real? I thought, yes, it was real. My name, my flight, my destination. India. And that was the beginning.
The long flight to India. The flight was the longest I ever had in my life. Before this trip, I had only flown to nearby countries in Europe. Those flights were short, 2 or 3 hours, but now I had to sit in a plane for many, many hours, cross countries, seas, and almost half the world. When I entered the airplane, I felt small. The plane was huge with many rows of seats. People around me were speaking different languages. Some were tourists like me, some were Indian families returning home, and some looked like business travelers. I sat by the window because I love to look outside when the plane is in the air. At first I was nervous. I checked my seatbelt 3 times. I listened to the announcements, and I tried to understand everything. The flight attendant smiled, and that made me feel more comfortable. When the plane started to move, I felt my heart beat faster. When it went up into the sky, my stomach felt light, like flying in a dream. The world outside became smaller and smaller. I looked down and saw my country disappearing. The houses and roads looked like toys, and soon they disappeared under the clouds. The hours passed slowly. I read a book. I wrote a little in my notebook, and I tried to sleep, but it was not easy. The seat was not very comfortable, and my thoughts were too excited. I kept thinking, I am going to India. I am going to India. The food on the plane was also interesting. The menu had some Indian options, and I decided to try them. The flavors were strong, and I liked them even if they were different from what I usually eat. I felt that my journey started already, even before landing. Sometimes I looked around. Next to me was a young woman with a child. She smiled at me, and we spoke a little. She told me that she lived in India, but studied in Europe. She was happy to go home and see her family. She asked me, "Is this your first time?" I said yes, and she laughed. Then you will never forget it, India will stay in your heart. Her words stayed in my mind. I imagined the streets, the people, the colors. I thought of the photos I would take, the food I would eat, the stories I would tell. After many hours, the announcement came, "We are preparing to land." My heart jumped. I looked outside. The clouds disappeared and I saw land. It was not like my home. It was different, with wide areas, many small houses, and rivers shining in the sun. The air looked warmer, almost golden. The plane went down lower and lower. I felt the wheels touch the ground. We were in India.
The first moments at the airport in India. When the plane stopped and the doors opened, warm air came inside. It smelled different. It was heavier, more humid and full of life. I stepped out, and I felt like I entered another world. The airport was big and full of people. I followed the signs, but sometimes I felt lost. Many travelers were walking fast. Families with children were talking loudly, and workers were guiding people to different places. I pulled my suitcase and tried to stay calm. At passport control, I waited in line. In front of me was a man with a turban. Behind me was a group of students with big backpacks. I listened to the voices around me. Some people spoke Hindi, some English, and other languages I did not recognize. It felt like a meeting of the whole world. When it was my turn, the officer looked at my passport. He asked me why I came, and I answered, "For tourism for 1 week." He stamped my passport and gave it back. That small sound of the stamp made me so happy. It was official. I was in India. After that, I collected my bag and walked toward the exit. The doors opened, and suddenly I felt the true energy of the country. Outside the airport, everything was alive. There were many cars, buses, and rickshaws. Drivers shouted, "Taxi, taxi." People walked fast with luggage. Families hugged each other, and children laughed. The sound was loud, almost too loud for me, but it was full of energy. The air was warm and smelled of spices, smoke, and flowers at the same time. I closed my eyes for a moment and breathed deeply. I told myself, yes, this is real. I am here. I looked around and everything felt new. The clothes of people were colorful, with women in bright saris and men in shirts and scarves. The faces were different from home, but many of them smiled. Even if I felt a little lost, I also felt welcomed. I took a taxi to my hotel. The ride itself was like an adventure. The traffic was fast and full of sounds, horns, engines, voices, but the driver seemed calm, like it was normal. From the window, I saw shops, small temples, fruit sellers, cows walking near the road, and many people everywhere. The city was alive in every corner. When we arrived at my hotel, I was tired but full of excitement. The hotel was small but clean. I put my bag down, looked out of the window, and saw the city lights. I whispered to myself, "Welcome to India. Yadi, your dream has just started."
The first city, first walk. The next morning, I woke up very early. My body was still confused because of the long flight and the change of time. For a few minutes, I did not know where I was. The sounds from the street reminded me I was in India. Horns, voices, and birds mixed together like a big song. I opened the window. Warm air entered my room, carrying the smell of dust, spices, and flowers. The street below was already busy. People were walking fast, selling things, driving rickshaws, calling to each other. I stood there for a long time, just looking. After a quick breakfast in the hotel, I decided to go for my first walk. I put on my comfortable shoes, took my small bag with water and my film camera, and stepped outside. The moment I left the hotel, I felt the energy of the city touch me. The street was full of life. Cars moved close to each other, rickshaws crossed between them, and motorbikes honked as they passed. People walked everywhere, sometimes on the road, sometimes on the side. Shops were open with bright signs, and sellers were calling loudly to customers. At first, it was a little overwhelming. Everything was louder, faster, and more colorful than I imagined. But slowly, I started to enjoy it. I walked without a plan, just following my eyes. I saw small temples painted in bright colors with flowers and candles. I saw fruit sellers with big baskets of bananas, mangoes, and papayas. I saw children in school uniforms laughing together as they walked. I tried to take photos with my film camera, but I also wanted to just watch and remember. Sometimes people looked at me with curiosity. Maybe it was because I was a foreigner, alone with a big camera, but many of them smiled when I smiled at them. That made me feel welcome. I stopped at a small stall to buy a bottle of water. The man at the stall asked me, "First time in India?" I nodded. He said, "Welcome, madam, you will enjoy." His words were simple, but they warmed my heart. I continued to walk. I passed by a park where families were sitting under trees. I saw women in colorful saris carrying baskets on their heads. I saw old men drinking tea in small cups and talking quietly. Every corner had a story. Every step was new. After a few hours, I was tired but also very happy. I returned to my hotel, sat on the bed, and wrote in my notebook, "The city is alive, louder than I ever imagined, and beautiful in its chaos."
Markets and streets. On the second day, I decided to explore the markets. Many people told me that the markets are the heart of Indian cities. There, you can see daily life, taste food, and feel the true spirit of the place. I asked the hotel receptionist which market I should visit. She smiled and told me the name of a big market not far away. She said, "Take a rickshaw. It is the best way." So I tried my first rickshaw ride. The driver was a thin man with a big smile. He asked me market, and I nodded. We started moving. The ride was like a roller coaster. The rickshaw was small, open on the sides, and the wind touched my face. We passed cars, cows, bicycles, and people. The driver used the horn many times, but he looked relaxed, like it was normal. I held my camera and laughed inside. It was fun, even if a little scary. When we arrived at the market, I almost lost my breath. It was huge, colorful, and full of people. Stalls were everywhere, selling clothes, spices, jewelry, shoes, and many other things. The air smelled of incense, fried food, and fresh fruits. Voices filled the air, sellers calling, customers answering, children laughing. I walked slowly, trying to see everything at one stall. I saw beautiful scarves in bright red, blue, green, and yellow. The seller invited me to touch them. The fabric was soft and shining. He said, "Very good price, madam. You like?" I smiled and said, "Maybe later." I was too shy to bargain, but I enjoyed looking. At another stall, I saw mountains of spices: red chili, yellow turmeric, brown cinnamon, green cardamom. The colors looked like a painter's palette. The smell was strong, but in a good way. The seller explained each spice to me. He let me smell them, and I felt dizzy with all the aromas. I also saw jewelry stalls with necklaces, bangles, and earrings. Women tried them on, and their laughter mixed with the sound of bells and music from a nearby radio. In the middle of the market, I found a small food corner. The smell was too good to resist. I bought a samosa, a fried triangle with spicy potatoes inside. It was hot, crunchy, and delicious. I also tried a sweet drink called lassi made of yogurt. It was cold and refreshing.
perfect after walking in the hot market. As I walked, I took photos with my film camera. I captured faces of sellers, hands full of spices, children playing between stalls, and the colors of the fabrics. Each photo felt like a little treasure. When I finally left the market, my head was full of impressions. My notebook later said, "The market is a festival of life, colors, sounds, smells, and tastes all together. I will never forget it."
Meeting people. One of the best parts of traveling is meeting new people. At first, I was shy. I did not know if people would want to talk with me, or if they would be too busy with their lives. But soon, I understood that many people in India are curious, friendly, and happy to share a few words. On my third day, I decided to sit in a small cafe near my hotel. It was not a big place, just a few wooden tables and chairs, and a man making tea behind a counter. The smell of chai tea filled the room, sweet, spicy, and warm. I ordered a cup and sat near the window. Soon 2 young women entered. They were about my age, maybe students. They noticed me, smiled, and asked, "Where are you from?" I answered, "I am from Eastern Europe. I am traveling for 1 week." They looked excited. "Oh, you are here alone? That is brave." One of them said they asked if they could sit with me, and of course I said yes. We spoke for almost an hour. Their names were Anjali and Priya. Both were studying at university, one in literature, the other in computer science. They told me about their city, their families, and their dreams. They wanted to travel too, maybe to Europe one day. They also taught me a few words in Hindi. I wrote them in my notebook. Namaste, hello, with respect. Dhanyavad, thank you. Acha hai, it is good. When I repeated the words, they laughed kindly. My pronunciation was not perfect, but they appreciated my effort. Before leaving, they said, "If you need help in the city, call us." They gave me their phone number. I felt so touched. It was my first real connection in India, and it made me feel less alone. Later that day, I also met a shop owner. He sold tea and spices. I entered his shop because it smelled wonderful. He explained the difference between black tea, green tea, and masala chai. He let me taste a small cup. It was strong and sweet, with milk and many spices. I liked it very much. When I wanted to pay, he smiled and said, "This one is free, a welcome to India." I insisted, but he shook his head. I left his shop with a small bag of tea that he gave me as a gift. These small moments made me realize that kindness exists everywhere, even between strangers. I wrote in my blog that evening. In India, I meet people who open their hearts in simple ways. A smile, a cup of tea, a friendly word. These things are as important as monuments and museums. Food adventures. Food is a big part of every culture, and in India, food is like a story told through spices, colors, and textures. From the beginning of my trip, I promised myself to try everything I could. On my 4th day, I joined a small food tour. I found it on the internet, and I thought it was a good way to explore without getting lost. Our guide was a cheerful man named Rakesh. He said, "Today he will taste the soul of our city." The first stop was a street stall there. We tried pani puri, small round shells filled with spicy water, potatoes and chickpeas. At first I was afraid because it looked complicated, but Rakesh showed us how to eat it. Put the whole piece in your mouth at once. When I did it, the flavors exploded, sour, spicy, fresh, and exciting. I laughed because it was so strong, but I liked it. Next, we walked to a corner where a man was making flat bread called paratha. He rolled the dough, filled it with potatoes and spices, and cooked it on a hot pan with butter.
We ate it with yogurt and pickles. It was soft, warm, and delicious. Then we tried biryani. It was rice cooked with spices, vegetables, and sometimes meat. The smell was amazing. Cardamom, cinnamon, cloves. I ate slowly, enjoying every bite. The rice was full of flavor, and it tasted different from anything I had before. We also drank sugarcane juice from a street vendor. He put the sugarcane into a machine and green juice came out. It was sweet and refreshing, perfect for the hot day. At the end of the tour, we tried sweets. I ate gulab jamun, small brown balls made from milk, soaked in sugar syrup. They were very sweet, almost too sweet, but wonderful with tea. While we ate, Rakesh told us stories. He said, "In India, food is more than taste. It is family, tradition, and celebration. Every dish has a history." That evening, I returned to my hotel full of food and happiness. I opened my laptop and wrote in my blog, "Indian food is not just food, it is an experience. Every bite is a surprise, sometimes strong, sometimes soft, always full of life."
Food adventures. After the food tour, I knew that eating in India was going to be one of the most memorable parts of my journey. Still, I wanted to explore more by myself. I decided that each day I would try at least one new dish, even if I did not know its name before. On the 5th day, I went to a small restaurant near the market. It was full of local people, which I thought was a good sign. The tables were simple, the floor was not perfect, but the smell inside was rich and warm. I sat down, and a waiter brought me a menu. The letters looked strange to me, but there were also English translations. I ordered thali. I had read about it before, and I wanted to try it soon. The waiter brought a big metal plate with many small bowls. In the bowls, there were different curries, vegetables, lentils, rice, bread, and a small dessert. It was like a small universe of tastes on one plate. I tried each bowl slowly. Some were spicy, some were sweet, some were creamy. The bread was soft, and I used it to eat the curry. The dessert was sweet and light. Eating thali felt like a journey inside the journey. Many flavors, many surprises. Another day, I tried dosas. They are thin, crispy pancakes made from rice and lentils. One dosa was longer than my arm. It was served with chutneys, coconut, tomato, and green chili, and also with hot soup called sambar. The combination was perfect. On the street, I also tasted jalebi, a sweet made from fried dough soaked in syrup. The pieces looked like orange spirals. They were crunchy outside and soft inside, and very sweet. I ate them carefully, because the syrup made my fingers sticky, but I could not stop smiling while eating. One evening, I walked past a busy corner where a man was making tea. He called it chai. He poured milk, tea leaves, sugar, and spices into a pot. He boiled it, then poured it back and forth between 2 cups to mix it well. Finally, he gave me a small glass of hot, sweet tea. The taste was strong, full of ginger and cardamom. It was like drinking warmth and comfort. I also tried lassi again, but this time in a different style. It was thick, almost like yogurt, and served in a clay cup. The clay gave it a special earthy taste. The seller told me, when you finish, you throw the cup away, back to the earth. I liked this idea very much. By the end of the week, I felt that I had tasted so much of India, but still not enough. Every street had something new, I wrote in my notebook. Food here is not only about filling the stomach, it is about joy, community, and tradition. Every meal is an invitation to be part of life. Local music and dance. One of the evenings in the first city gave me a memory I will never forget. I was walking without a clear destination, just following the sounds of the streets when I suddenly heard music. It was not from a shop or a radio, it was live. I followed the sound until I reached a small square. There a group of musicians were playing. One man had a drum, another played a string instrument,
and two young boys clapped their hands and sang. Around them, people were standing, listening and smiling. Some children started to dance. The rhythm was strong, fast, and full of energy. Even if I did not understand the words, the music spoke to me. It was not only sound, it was emotion, tradition, and community. Soon, a few women joined the dance. They moved their hands and feet with grace. Their colorful clothes swirled in the air, shining in the light. The children laughed and tried to copy the steps. The square became like a small festival. I stood there watching, feeling the music in my chest. Then a little girl came to me and pulled my hand. She wanted me to dance too. At first I was shy. I said, no, I cannot dance. But the people around smiled and encouraged me, so I tried. My steps were not perfect, but nobody cared. We all laughed together for a few minutes. I was not a tourist. I was part of the dance, part of the music, part of the crowd. After the music stopped, I clapped with everyone. My face was red from smiling. A woman next to me said, "This is our culture. Music is in our blood." That night, I walked back to my hotel slowly, still hearing the rhythm in my head. I thought about how music connects people without words. It does not matter where you are from. When you hear the beat, you feel the same joy. In my blog, I wrote, "India sings to you. It sings through drums, voices, and dancing feet. It invites you not only to listen, but also to join."
Blogging about the journey. Every evening, after walking through the busy streets, after eating new dishes, and after meeting new people, I returned to my hotel room. I was usually tired, but I always opened my laptop or notebook. Writing was an important part of my journey. I had started my blog 2 years earlier. At first, it was small. I wrote about books I read, about the winter in my country, about little moments of daily life. Not many people read it. Only my friends, some family, and a few strangers who like simple stories. But when I announced that I was going to India, something changed. Many people became curious. They sent me messages. "Please tell us everything. Please share photos. We want to travel with you through your words." I felt like I had a small community waiting for my stories. So, in India, each evening I sat at the desk in my hotel room and wrote. Sometimes I typed on my laptop. Sometimes I preferred to write by hand in my notebook first. I described the streets, the markets, the food, the people. I tried to use simple words, but with many feelings. I wrote about the smells. The air is a mix of spices, flowers, dust, and smoke. It feels heavy but full of life. I wrote about the sounds, horns, voices, bells, music, and birds. The city never sleeps. It sings and shouts at the same time. I wrote about the colors. Red saris, yellow marigold flowers, green mangoes, blue signs, golden temples. The city is a rainbow that never ends. When I pressed publish, I felt excited. Then, slowly, comments appeared. My readers said things like, "I can almost smell the spices from your words," or "Please write more about the people you meet," or "Now India is also my dream." This communication gave me energy even though I was far from home. I felt close to people. I was not alone with my experience. I was sharing it, and that made it stronger. One night I was so tired that I thought, maybe I will not write today. But then I remembered a message from a girl in my country. She had written, "I am sick and cannot travel, but when I read your blog, I feel like I am on the streets of India with you." After reading that, I could not stop. I opened my laptop and wrote again, even if my eyes were closing. I understood something. My blog was not only about me, it was also for others. My journey was personal, but when I wrote it, it became bigger, it became shared. My film camera and photography. While blogging was my way to write memories, photography was my way to catch them with light. I had taken my grandfather's old film camera.
It was heavy compared to modern digital cameras, and it was not always easy to use, but I loved it. Each morning, before leaving the hotel, I put the camera carefully into my bag. I also carried rolls of film. Each roll had only 36 photos, so I had to choose carefully. It was not like a phone where you can take hundreds of pictures in a few minutes. With film, every click is a decision. Walking in the streets, I looked for moments: a boy flying a kite on the rooftop, a woman arranging flowers in front of a temple, a man selling colorful balloons, a cow standing calmly in the middle of the traffic. Each moment was unique, like a small story. When I lifted the camera to my eye, sometimes people noticed. Many smiled. Some children laughed and made funny faces. Sometimes I asked, "Can I take your photo?" They nodded shyly or proudly. A few people said no, and I respected that. Taking photos with film is slow. You must think about light, about focus, about composition. Sometimes I waited for the right second, when the wind moved the scarf of a woman or when the sun touched the golden roof of a temple. I loved these quiet moments of waiting in the middle of a busy street. I knew I could not see the photos until later, after developing the film, but maybe that was the magic. It made me live in the moment. Instead of looking at a screen, I looked at the world directly. One day, I met a young man who asked about my camera. He said, "Why do you not use a phone? It is easier." I smiled and answered, "Because this camera makes me slow down. It makes me see more." He thought for a second, then nodded. Yes, maybe that is true. At night, I wrote in my blog about my film camera. I wrote, "Photography is like collecting pieces of time. With film, you do not know exactly what you caught until later. That is like life. You live the moment, and only later you understand its meaning." I imagined how, when I returned home, I would develop the photos. Each photo would be like opening a small box of memory. Maybe some would be blurred, maybe some too dark, but they would be mine, full of truth.
Visiting a temple. One morning, I decided to visit a temple. I had seen many temples from the street, with their towers, bells, and decorations. But I wanted to step inside, slowly, with respect, and feel what it was like to be there. Before going, I asked the hotel receptionist what I should do to be polite. She said, "Cover your shoulders, wear modest clothes, and remove your shoes before entering." I was happy she told me, because I wanted to show respect. The temple was not very far when I arrived. I first saw the entrance decorated with marigold flowers. The air was full of incense, bells were ringing, and people were walking in and out quietly. I removed my shoes and placed them near the door. The floor was cool under my feet inside. The light was soft, coming from candles and oil lamps. The walls were painted with bright colors, showing stories and gods. People stood in front of statues, praying silently. Some carried flowers, some brought fruit, some offered money. Others just closed their eyes and whispered. The atmosphere was calm but powerful. I walked slowly, trying not to disturb anyone. I watched the rituals. The priest moved with grace, touching the fire, ringing a bell, and giving blessings. A family with small children knelt together, their hands folded. The children looked curious, but also respectful. Even if I did not understand the words, I felt something strong. The temple was not only a building, it was a place of connection between people, between tradition, between the visible and the invisible. I sat quietly in a corner for some time. I listened to the sound of chanting. The rhythm was steady, peaceful, almost hypnotic. My mind became calm. When I left, an old woman gave me a small flower. She smiled with kind eyes. I did not know if it was part of a ritual or just a gift, but I accepted it with gratitude. I held the flower in my hand and thought, this moment is simple, but unforgettable. Back in my hotel, I wrote,
A temple in India is not only for religion, it is for life. It is a place where people bring their hopes, their fears, their thanks. Even as a foreigner, I felt welcome. Respect is a language that everyone understands.
A day trip outside the city. After several days in the busy city, I wanted to see something different. The noise, the traffic, the crowds, they were fascinating. But I also needed some fresh air and open space. So I joined a small group for a day trip outside the city. Early in the morning, a van picked us up. There were 6 of us. 2 travelers from Europe, 1 couple from Australia, 1 young man from Japan, and me. Our guide was a smiling man named Arjun. He said, "Today we will see the countryside. You will discover another side of India." We drove for about 2 hours slowly. The city disappeared. The tall buildings, the busy markets, and the endless traffic gave way to green fields, small houses and quiet roads. Cows and goats walked freely. Children waved at us as we passed. Our first stop was a small village. The houses were simple, made of bricks and clay. Women were carrying water pots, men were working in the fields, and children were playing with homemade toys. The people welcomed us with smiles. A woman invited us into her house inside. It was cool and dark, with only a few pieces of furniture. She showed us how she cooked bread on an open fire. She gave us some to taste. It was warm and soft, and we ate it with butter. Later, we walked through the fields. The sun was strong, but the wind was fresh. I saw farmers working with their hands, planting and watering crops. They looked at us with curiosity, but also friendliness. One farmer even let me try to use his tool. I was not very good at it, but everyone laughed, including me. We also visited a small temple in the village. It was simpler than the big temples in the city, but it felt even more personal. The people prayed there daily, and the atmosphere was peaceful. At lunch, we sat under a big tree and ate food prepared by the villagers: rice, vegetables, lentils, and fresh fruit. Everything was natural and tasty. We drank water from clay pots, which kept it cool. In the afternoon, we walked near a river. The water was calm and children were swimming. Birds flew above us. It was so quiet compared to the city. I sat on a stone and just looked at the water. For the first time in days, I felt deep silence around me. On the way back to the city, I thought about the contrast. India was full of opposites: noise and silence, modern and traditional, fast and slow. Both sides were beautiful in their own way. That night, I wrote in my blog, "Today I saw another India, not the crowded markets, not the busy traffic, but the quiet fields and villages. Life there is simple, but full of dignity. The smile of a farmer, the bread of a woman, the play of children. These are treasures that no museum can show."
Moving to second big city. After a few unforgettable days in the first city, it was time to continue my journey. I wanted to see more, to feel another rhythm of life, and to compare 2 different places. So, I packed my suitcase again and prepared for the trip to the second big city. The morning of my departure was full of mixed feelings. I was excited to see something new, but also sad to leave the streets I had already started to know. The fruit seller near my hotel smiled at me every morning. The chai man recognized me and always poured tea with extra ginger, and the children near the corner waved at me. These small daily connections became part of my life. I took a taxi to the train station. The road was, as always, full of noise and movement. When we arrived, I saw the huge station. It was a world by itself. Thousands of people walking, carrying bags, selling snacks, shouting, laughing, waiting. The sound of trains mixed with the voices of the crowd. Buying a ticket and finding my train was not easy. I asked for help many times, and kind people showed me the way. I carried my suitcase and followed the signs. Finally,
I stood in front of a long train painted in red and yellow. It looked strong and full of stories. Inside the train, I found my seat near the window. The seat was simple but comfortable enough around me. Families were talking, children were playing, and vendors walked through the corridor selling tea, water, and snacks. When the train started to move, I felt a new wave of excitement. Slowly, the city disappeared behind us, and fields, rivers, and villages appeared outside the window. I watched carefully, like I wanted to remember every tree and every house. The journey was long, but I enjoyed it. I ate some snacks, fried pakoras, salty nuts, and sweet biscuits, bought from a vendor. The tea was hot and sweet, served in a small cup. I spoke a little with the woman sitting next to me. She was traveling to visit her family. She asked about my country, and I asked about hers. Even with simple English, we shared smiles and stories. After many hours, we arrived at the second city. The station was as busy as the first one, maybe even more. The air felt different, still warm and heavy, but with another smell, another rhythm. I stepped out and thought, a new chapter begins. I found a taxi and went to my hotel. On the way, I saw wide streets, tall buildings, big billboards, and endless traffic. This city felt more modern, more international, but still very Indian. I could not wait to explore. That evening, from the window of my hotel, I looked at the lights of the city. They shone like stars on earth. I whispered to myself, "Hello, second city. Show me your secrets."
Exploring history and museums. The next day, I decided to start with history. I wanted to understand more about the country, not only through food and markets, but also through museums and monuments. I visited a famous museum in the center of the city. The building itself was beautiful, old, elegant, with high ceilings and wide halls. Inside it was cool and quiet, a strong contrast to the noisy streets outside. The first room was about ancient India. I saw sculptures made of stone, thousands of years old. The faces of gods, the figures of dancers, the animals carved with so much detail. I walked slowly, reading the descriptions, imagining the people who made them. The next room showed old coins, jewelry, and tools. Each object was small, but it carried so much history. A necklace worn by a queen, a coin used in trade, a pot used for cooking. I thought about the lives behind these objects, the hands that touched them. I also visited a gallery of paintings. The colors were soft but rich, showing kings, queens, battles, and festivals. I stood in front of one painting for a long time. It showed a group of women by a river washing clothes and laughing together. It was simple, but it felt alive. In another part of the museum, I learned about the colonial period. When India was under British rule, there were photos, documents, and objects from that time. It was not an easy history, and I felt the weight of it. But I also saw the strength of the people who fought for independence. After the museum, I visited a historical monument. It was a big gate built long ago, standing proudly near the sea. Many people were there, walking, taking photos, enjoying the view. Children were eating ice cream, couples were sitting together, and tourists were asking guides for stories. I stood near the gate and looked at the sea. The waves came and went, endless and calm. The monument was strong, but the sea was even stronger. Eternal. I thought about how many people had stood in the same place before me, looking at the same water, dreaming about the future. That evening, I wrote in my blog, history is not only in books, it is in stones, in objects, in paintings, in India. History is alive. It walks with you in the streets. It speaks in the monuments.
it sings in the voices of people. Today, I felt closer to the soul of this country.
Modern life in the second city. The second city was very different from the first one, of course. There were markets, temples, and crowded streets here too. But it also felt more modern, more international. It was like two worlds living together, the old and the new. On my second day there, I decided to explore the modern side of the city. I walked down a wide street full of shops, cafes, and offices. Tall glass buildings stood next to small houses with laundry hanging outside. Bright billboards advertised new phones, clothes, and movies. Young people in jeans and t-shirts walked quickly, talking on their phones. I entered a shopping mall, curious to see what it was like inside. It looked almost like a mall in Europe. Air-conditioned, clean, shiny floors, international shops. I saw families shopping together, groups of teenagers eating fast food and business people drinking coffee. For a moment, I felt like I was back home. But then I noticed small differences. The food court offered both pizza and dosas. The music was a mix of Bollywood songs and international pop. And in one corner there was a small temple where people stopped for a quick prayer. Later, I visited a university area. Students walked around with books and laptops. Some sat in groups under trees discussing. A young man came to me and asked in English, "Are you a traveler?" When I said yes, he smiled and started asking me questions about Europe. He wanted to know about the education system, about the weather, about the lifestyle. Then he told me about his dream to study abroad. His eyes shone with energy and hope. Walking further, I saw modern art galleries, bookstores, and coffee shops full of young people working on laptops. I realized that this city was not only tradition, but also future India was not only temples and spices, it was also technology, creativity, and ambition. But what surprised me most was how these two sides lived together. On one street, I could see a high-tech office, and just next to it, a small stall selling coconuts. I could hear the sound of car horns and, at the same time, the chanting from a temple. It was a mix, sometimes confusing but beautiful. That evening, in my blog, I wrote, "The modern side of India shows me that this country is not frozen in history. It grows, it changes, it runs forward, but it also carries its past with pride, tradition, and modern life walk together, hand in hand." Evening walks and reflections. Evenings in the second city became very special to me. After a day of exploring, I liked to walk without a plan, just following the streets, the lights, and the sounds. The city at night was alive in a different way. The heat of the day softened, the air became cooler, and people came out to enjoy. Families walked together. Children ate ice cream, young couples sat on benches by the sea, and groups of friends laughed near food stalls. One evening, I walked to a promenade by the sea. The waves were hitting the rocks, and the air was full of salt and freshness. Street lamps made the water shine like silver. I sat on a bench and watched people around me. Some walked slowly, holding hands, some jogged, listening to music. Some just sat like me, looking at the sea. An old man sat near me. He smiled and said, "Beautiful, isn't it?" His English was simple, but his eyes said more than words. We spoke a little. He told me he came there every evening after work. He said the sea is like a friend. It listens. It never leaves. I thought about his words. Traveling is also like the sea. It listens to your heart. It changes you, and it stays with you forever. Another evening, I explored a busy street full of food stalls. The smell of fried snacks, roasted corn, and sweet desserts filled the air. People stood in lines waiting for their favorite dishes. I tried roasted corn with lemon and salt. It was hot, juicy, and simple, but so delicious. As I walked, I noticed small details. A boy selling balloons in many colors, a woman drawing henna on another woman's hands, a group of children playing cricket in the middle of the street. Life was happening everywhere, full of energy. When I returned to my hotel late at night, I was tired but happy. I opened my window and looked at the city lights again. They were like little stars, alive and close. In my notebook, I wrote, "In the evenings, the city shows me its soul. It is not only about monuments or museums. It is about people walking, laughing, eating, living. These moments are small, but they are the real treasure of travel."
Saying goodbye to India. The last morning of my trip came too quickly. I felt like I had just arrived, but already I had to prepare to leave. My suitcase was open on the bed, and I carefully placed my clothes, my notebooks, and my film rolls inside. Each object carried a memory. The scarf I bought at the market, the spices from the tea cellar, the clay cup I could not throw away because it reminded me of Lassie. When I zipped the suitcase, I felt a deep sadness. My week in India had been short, but so full, so rich. Every day gave me new colors, new tastes, new faces. I was not ready to say goodbye. Before leaving for the airport, I decided to take one last walk. I went to a small street near my hotel. The chai man recognized me and shouted, "One last tea, madam." I smiled and nodded. The tea was hot, sweet, and perfect. I thanked him, and he pressed his hand to his heart. That small gesture said everything. I also passed a fruit seller. He gave me a mango and said, "For your journey." I tried to pay, but he refused gift. He said, my eyes became wet. I thought, how can I say thank you to a whole country? At the airport, I went through the same steps as before: security, passport control, waiting rooms. But this time my heart was heavy. I looked around at the people, some arriving, some leaving, all with their own stories. When the plane took off, I pressed my face to the window. The city became smaller, the lights turned into dots, and then everything disappeared under the clouds. I whispered to myself, "Goodbye, India. Thank you." During the flight, I tried to sleep, but my mind was full of memories. I remembered the first walk in the market, the music in the square, the temple with incense, the countryside with children waving, the conversations with strangers who became friends. I felt grateful, richer in spirit than before.
Final reflections and dreams for the future. Back home, when I opened the door of my apartment, everything looked the same as before. The same furniture, the same books, the same view from the window, but I was not the same. Something inside me had changed. For days I told my family and friends about my trip. I showed them souvenirs. I shared my stories. I described the food, the streets, the music. They listened with wide eyes. My mother said, "You sound different, more alive." I laughed and said, maybe India gave me new colors inside. When I developed my film photos, I felt like opening a box of treasures. Some photos were perfect, sharp, full of light. Some were not, blurred, too dark, or cut. But all of them were real. They captured the truth of the moments. When I looked at them, I remembered the exact feeling of being there. I continued to write in my blog, now not only about the journey, but also about how it changed me. I wrote, "Traveling is not only about places, it is about people, about opening your heart, about learning to see the world differently. In India, I discovered chaos and beauty together. I discovered kindness in strangers, strength in traditions, and joy in small things. Many people read those words and sent me messages. Some said, "Now we want to visit India too." Others said, "Thank you for taking us on this journey through your eyes." That made me feel proud. Sometimes, when I close my eyes, I can still hear the horns of the traffic, the rhythm of the drums, the laughter of children. I can still smell chai, incense and flowers. India is far away on the map, but close in my heart. I know that my journey is not finished. 1 week was only the beginning. I dream to return. Maybe to other cities, maybe to the mountains, maybe to the south with the sea. I also dream to visit other countries one day, but India will always be special because it was my first big step into the wide world. Now, when I feel afraid of something new, I remember myself sitting in a rickshaw, holding my camera, smiling at the chaos around me. If I could do that, I can do many other things. So, dear listener, thank you for walking with me through my story. Thank you for joining my journey. I hope my words gave you a little piece of the colors, sounds, and feelings I experienced. And maybe, one day, you will also take a flight, step into a new